We are recording, so Bob, you can kick off the meeting.
Okay. I think all of you have been here before and you know the drill, but just to go over it, we'll do some quick introductions of who we are and who you are. You'll have about 15 minutes or so to make your presentation. We'll have a Department of Planning and Zoning staff report, and then we'll open it up for some question and answers and ultimately make some recommendations to DPZ. So whoever's making the presentation, you're up.
Okay, thank you. I somehow trying to get rid of the picture of me. I got off the entire web page here, so give me just 1 second.
Anthony, is there any way you can allow me to share my screen? I've got everything queued up and ready to go on my end.
Yep, I can go ahead and change you to presenter. Hang on for 1 second.
Yeah, Justin, if you'll present, I'll talk and I'll just tell you when to.
All right, can everybody see the screen?
No.
Oh, I have to do this. I still don't see Chris.
There it
How about
is.
now?
Got it.
Okay. So my apologies. I'm Jeff Henneman, and my firm Henneman and Associates, we were selected as the design architects for Deer Path apartment project. And because I think there's some relevance to it, I just wanted to mention this is my 8th project designed along the Route 1 corridor. And this entire development team, this is our 3rd project. And I say that because I think it speaks to the success of the zoning, and all 8 projects are for the most part full. So that's a good thing. But we've enjoyed the opportunity to be involved in this, and hopefully are making a difference, and hopefully acting as somewhat of a catalyst for future development. So, but be that as it may, tonight we're here to talk about Deer Path. And this is a project located off of Route 100 and Route 1, basically. Justin, you want to go ahead and flip to the next? What I'm going to do is very quickly have a few comments and then turn it over to Sybil for a few comments, and I'll be back. Go ahead and flip to the next one, Justin. I don't know if you have the aerial that shows the, okay. Now,
I can here. I can pull up this Google Earth image, which is a little bit more zoomed out.
Okay, whose cursor are we going to be seeing? Yours, Justin?
Can you see a cursor moving around the screen right now?
No, I see mine.
Justin, we can see yours. It's just
It's tiny, but I see it.
Oh, okay.
Well, the thing that I wanted to mention, here's our project site. Deer Path, right, is located right here. Next to that site, this is the Dorsey Apartments, and these are designed and have been permitted and will probably start construction this calendar year, which is this project located right here. We have a completed project down the street. I can't quite see it on this exhibit. You can see it on the one you just had up.
Here, I'll flip back to that.
We have a project called the Refinery. Yeah, we have a project called the Refinery, which is off of Route 1, and is that Dorsey Run Road right there?
This section, I believe, is Dorsey Run, and then this is Dorsey curving this
So
way.
that project has been completed and has performed very well. Happy to say. So as I mentioned, this is the 3rd project in the with TOD zoning, and here's the Mark Station. Justin, you can show them the Mark Station. We're approximately a half mile away from the Mark Station. And the generally the lay of the land is, and most of you, if you haven't seen it, is kind of office warehouse, and slowly transitioning with the projects that we're doing and probably future projects into a little bit more of a diversified mix of building types where we're introducing a number of residential units. Our project is proposed to consist of 250 units with a 450 stall parking garage. And it's, as I already mentioned, it's about a half a mile away from the MARC station. One of the things that we wanted to touch on briefly that came out of our last DAP meeting, I think it was when Don Taylor was chairing the DAP committee. He had mentioned for Dorsey to try to work with the county and delineate in greater detail access, both pedestrian and bicycle access from our site to the MARC station. And I think we have a exhibit that kind of shows one of the owner's reps has been working with the county to get this all done. I think it's, at this point, it's been pretty much consummated.
Right. So here's some aerial imagery that's from last year. I don't know if it's possible, so I can zoom in here, but there has been bike lane striping installed along Deer Path Road, as you can see, running all the way from where Deer Path proposed site is to the MARC station itself.
All right.
So the MARC station is just off the page here to the right is the context here.
What
Right.
about sidewalks?
I don't know. It's a good question. I thought I was under the impression the sidewalks were in. You know, obviously a lot of these parcels are owned by other people, but
Jeff, I think that this is Chris Ogle, Benchmark. The purpose of the striping on Deer Path was because of the lack of sidewalk and a lack of ability and ownership to construct that sidewalk. So it was negotiated with Howard County that Howard County with the developer that Howard County would put in the striping for the bike and the pedestrian access along there down to the connection to the MARC station.
okay. Thank you. I stand corrected. So as one of the goals of the Route 1 manual to provide safe and convenient access, that's the reason I brought that up was that we did follow up on Don's request. And that's as far as we've gotten thus far in providing that access to the site. And of course, the vehicular access is the overpasses. I think you're all familiar off of Route 100. Okay, next slide, please. All right, this is the existing site with the building that's on the site currently, and our client is housed in this building, and it's a one-story kind of office warehouse structure. There's a church housed in it as well. It's I don't know how many square feet it is, but the important part, the important thing to mention here is the site is relatively flat. It's kind of a plate. And by keeping the site flat to accommodate the parking in the building, the primary entrance, which is, I'm using my cursor, but I don't know. The primary entrance is down on the southeast corner. And there's a pretty severe ramp up to the elevation of our site. And it's noteworthy, and I'll explain why here as we go through the other slides. But the access point is off of Deer Path. It's really the end of Deer Path. So it's kind of a circuitous way to get around there, but fortunately these are fairly formidable buildings, and I think that you know, the wayfinding will be provided through the graphics and so on, and I think it'll be more than apparent as to when and where you enter the site. The next image, please. Oh, Chris, you were going to talk about, sorry,
You-
go back to the last slide, please. I'm sorry. Chris Ogle was going to kind of describe some of the surrounding conditions. So go ahead, Chris. I'm sorry.
You were doing pretty good. You were doing pretty good, Jeff.
Okay.
So just to piggyback on what Jeff was saying, he covered most of the what's going on actually onto the site, as you can already see. What we wanted to point out, though, there are two entrances. Again, I just emphasize there are two entrances into the site currently now. The building elevation is really higher than the road today. So the first entrance in is about, I don't know, about 10 feet lower than where the actual building elevation is. The second entrance is much lower along that area. And both entrances are being utilized for that building currently. So I think I think you can go ahead and flip to the next slide. So the project is about 4.3 acres. It's zone TOD. We're proposing to remove the existing office building that is there and the surrounding parking, and to construct this apartment building of 250 units. To meet the TOD requirements, we keep in the building, the residential area, the building and the residential area to 50% of a site or less. We're providing the 10% amenity area, which will be the courtyard, and there are many areas that surround the building. With the entrance to the building, there are several entrances into the building. The first entrance will be to a terrace level of the building, the terrace level of the building. That will be the first entrance on the right as you approach the parcel. That in elevation will go down to the lower level to the terrace. The second entrance into the site will be the actual entrance into the parking garage, and that will have a slight rise up into the parking garage, which will be about halfway between the terrace level and the first floor. And then the third entrance into the site will be basically the lobby entrance into the site and the service entrance for UPS and mail and whatnot. And as Jeff was saying, that is located at the very end of the site, and that would be the lower end of the site. The higher end of the site that gives us a better elevation into the building. We also, working with fire and rescue, we find it very important that we make sure that we have we allow them enough ability to circulate around the building. So with the design that we have here and communicating with fire and rescue, we think we'll be able to provide a loop road completely around the building, from where the lobby entrance is all the way down to the southeast corner of the building back out to Deer Path. I think that's pretty much it for the proposed. Jeff will probably get into a little bit more detail with the building and what's happening.
Okay. Why don't we move on to the next image, please? So to amplify what Chris was saying, when we first started looking at options for this particular parcel, and it is a challenging geometry, and it's at the end of the street, and there are a number of factors that were involved in how we came up with this ultimate layout. We had tried several other alternative locations for and configurations of the building, but we ended up choosing the one that you see. And this particular drawing shows the terrace level. And as Chris mentioned, down at this point, there's about from Deer Path up to the first floor slab level is about 10 feet. And some of our earlier schemes had the main entry into the building located on this corner, but it was too much grade to overcome. And it would have required too much excavation and too much scarring of the land in our mind. And so we made the decision to come down to the end of Deer Path and enter where the entry to the existing building currently is. We'd be entering basically at grade, and that's down here more towards the end center of our site. Yeah, you can see it there, and at the end of at the very end of Deer Path. Now, when you consider that most of the users will be familiar, obviously, with the building and how to get there, will be coming in and out of the garage. I think that strategy is sound in that the garage entry is kind of the first thing as you come down Deer Path, because that's where those 450 automobiles will be entering and exiting, the residents that live there. The prospects will be guided through signage and so on down to the entrance at grade that you see with the kind of motor court. And of course, that is, we'll view out onto, that be our money shot out onto the amenity area, outdoor amenity area. What you see there in the orange is the indoor amenity area, which is to the east side of the outdoor amenity area. So that's the thinking behind the entries. And there's some building services entries to the further west, move-ins and move-outs, where it's somewhat screened from the normal everyday activities and tied into the fire access loop road. Brian Reitz will be getting into more of the landscape design, but one of the features of the fire access road is we put this, I think it's done through turf block, and we put this walking path around it. So it provides a continuous path around the building as well as fire access, and becomes somewhat of an amenity of its own. As I said, the building is a 4-story wood frame building. It's approximately 350,000 square feet, proposed 250 units. And the crescent shaped kind of panhandle there, the drooping panhandle is really a function of kind of following the setbacks and the property line and wanting to cradle that outdoor and protect that outdoor amenity space, which has to be protected acoustically from the traffic noise of Route 100. So it kind of meant a functional need and kind of provided, we think, a level of interest to the building facades. And that is generally was generally the strategy around the configuration and location of the various building components. Have the next slide, please. This is the facade, we call it the end cap. That, can you go back to the other slide? The previous slide, okay. To the right of the motor court, that's the end cap or the main entry into the building, and that's where prospects will be led. You can go on to the next image, please. And it's shown in elevation here, and we think it's pretty dynamic, and it's similar in style to the refinery, which is the first building that we showed built off of Route 100 and Dorsey Run. It's got a lot of the same DNA, and we think we had a winning combination on the first building, and think we have a winning combination on this one. Now, the bottom elevation here is the elevation from Deer Path looking to the building, and it may be a little confusing, but what you see is mostly masonry from the far right to the middle of the left. That's the facade will be immediately off of Deer Path, and it's, as I said, it's predominantly masonry. The masonry will start to vignette rather dramatically as you move away from areas that are seen by the public and inside the courtyard and around the back facing Route 100. The elevation on the top there is the east elevation. That's the elevation facing the office building. And that's where you can start to see the masonry on the far left. That's the end cap, and then masonry on the far right, which is the other corner of the building. And then in between is a series of kind of maintenance free. There's vinyl siding and there's some masonry, and the entire building will have a stone base on every side of the building, and it'll be building stone, full depth, full mortar bed depth building stone, and we think that'll give it, literally its foundation, kind of an attachment to the existing grade, if you will. Okay, and the next slide, please. Next image. Yeah, these are elevations that just continue to show as you go around the building, and it's a tough building to elevate because it's, of the crescent shape, but I think you get the general idea. Next image, please. All right. And that's looking at the crescent shape kind of broken up into various match lines, all being design professionals. I'm sure you're familiar with that. Next image, please. Okay, here's two site sections. The top one is the section through, that's the wing, the crescent shaped wing coming out, cutting through the outdoor amenity space. And then you see to the far right, the facade, the main entry facade of the building. And the image below that is a transverse longitudinal section kind of through the garage, where you can see where we have a terrace level of the garage, and that ramps up to 5 levels total to provide the parking, and of course with units wrapped around the entire building. And there are area ways on the 2 long sides of the garage, and that's used to provide ventilation, natural ventilation into the garage, which is a strategy that's pretty much used universally with this building type. Next, please. Yeah, this shows a little bit better. There's a couple of quick SketchUp massing models, and you get a little bit better idea of scale of the building next compared to the scale of the adjacent buildings, which I think is very compatible. Next, please. Again, this is a perspective of the main entry of the building, which we already talked about, but it's a combination. I think we usually generally commit to 25 to 30% masonry in various forms, either brick or building stone. And we try to adhere to, the palette that's kind of existing if we think that that's pleasing. And I think in this case it is. There are some attractive buildings in this development. Okay, so that in a nutshell is kind of the architectural overview, and I'm going to let Brian Reach now talk about the landscape issues, and I can come back and be happy to answer any questions. So thank you.
I did have one question before you go to the landscape. Are there any sketches or views of the apartment that you said would be under construction this summer, and is it the same client? I was just wondering how the two buildings will relate to one another.
It is the same client, and I don't know, Justin, do you have any?
Unfortunately, I don't have anything quickly at hand to put up because I'm on a different machine.
There are some subtle differences in style, but I would say it's certainly the same family of details. Like I said, it all comes from the same DNA, which is me, but be happy to provide that to you, or you could get on our website and see it. I think that it's on there.
But it's in the tradition of the refinery apartments, that same type of style, maybe just a variation of it.
Exactly.
Okay.
It is in that same style, and I guess if I had to describe it, I would describe it as somewhat transitional. It has some traditional elements to it. I'm a big believer in, if it's a residential building, showing balconies. And by the way, we provide about 50% balconies in our proposed project, and we apply window grids and things that I think are indicative of residential. They kind of distinguish residential buildings from other commercial office buildings. But yeah, I think that each of the three has its own little personality, but I think that, to use one of Dwayne's favorite terms, it's always about harmonious diversity is what we're looking for. And each of the amenity spaces we try to have with some kind of special feature of its own, but yet a lot of, we're really hoping to get a lot of, cross fertilization and people from one building hopefully enjoying and using the amenities of the other building. I mean, it's all ships rise with the tide. So we're hoping that as we make these improvements, that 1 + 1 will equal 3, and that's the desire anyway.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thanks, Jeff. All right, Justin, I think obviously here you can see the two projects, Dorsey Apartments that you were just asking about, Larry, and the new Deer Path apartment projects. Justin, can you go to the next slide? We zoom in a little bit. All right, just looking at our parcel, Jeff and Chris sort of mentioned that as you move through the site from the lower right, the grade is pretty low and the whole site is tabletopped. And so again, that allows for the service and the garage entry to enter in there. It also means that the streetscape along that section, if you notice in Jeff's elevation, has masonry along the base, and and the way the elevation's drawn, it shows a fair amount of that. What we would end up doing here is using that to our advantage to move stormwater into a raised planter, say like a 24-inch tall wall, and integrate a layered landscape approach. So not only the street trees, but also working in stormwater management there. That, because it's the low site, it allows us to move a fair amount of the building, capture it, and then move it into pipe into that location. And in a way, it allows us to celebrate. In addition to that, the low walls and the landscape there, we think will help transition you as you move along Deer Path from the right to the vehicular court, help to dress up that side of the building. And then, of course, you can see in this sketch here, the vehicular court and its relationship to the entrance and that end perspective that Jeff had shown, with the blue here being the where the clubhouse wraps. We'll zoom in a minute to the amenity courtyard, but I want to hit on a few of the perimeter items of the project. Chris Malagari mentioned how we need to maintain emergency access around the building. Our desire here is not to add another asphalt road. So we're looking to do a grass paved system, and in this case, trying to take something that's rather restrictive from a design standpoint and add a little life to it. So picking up the building access points around the perimeter of the building and working in a pathway system that sort of weaves in and out of that emergency access way. We've done this effectively together. Jeff's team and our team have done this at the Vine in near Maple Lawn, where we added the fire access around the building, and it ended up being a great asset for those that live in the building from the standpoint of getting out with your dog. In this case, it provides pedestrian access from various parts of the building over to the dog park, which is on the adjacent Dorsey parcel. In addition, you can see on the north side of the building the SMW label. Where we can, this is a fairly tight site, so where we can, we're integrating stormwater management in order to meet our requirements, and looking at those as opportunities to bring the pedestrians sort of in and through those design elements in order to make them and the landscape more engaging and dynamic. Let's see, if you go to the next slide, Justin. All right, this plan was just to sort of highlight where the service and garage entry are. And then if you go to the next plan. I think we're going to zoom into the amenity courtyard. All right. So vehicular court located off the main entry. I think Jeff mentioned this, but the way the site is set up, with the topography, it allows us to siphon off the vehicles to the project before the auto court, which we think is great because a small percentage of the vehicles, the day-to-day cars will need to come back to this location. But, you know, we do see the need for short-term parking from the standpoint of leasing and startup and things like that, as well as the frequent Amazon deliveries that we all know. So making sure that vehicles have an opportunity to come in here, access to the main entrance, Uber drop-offs and so forth, and a few convenience parking spaces to assist with leasing. But again, the majority of the parking and vehicular traffic will be siphoned off into the garage for those tenants that live in the building. You can see that the clubhouse in the blue shape, you know, not only fronts on the vehicular court, it also sort of snakes around to the east of the courtyard. We always like to maximize the relationship of that interior club to the exterior amenities. And the way that this piece is set up with north sort of angling to, it's a pretty small north arrow down in the bottom, but to the upper right, as the sun swings around, we wanted to move the pool out of the shadow of the building. So we sort of pushed it more towards the center, but also it allows us to provide what we call our Four Seasons amenity, the courtyard area that's accessible all year round and is not closed off by the pool enclosure. And that would include the fire pit, grill stations, various areas for outdoor dining, in this case, an outdoor TV area with catenary lighting and just a variety of seating options so that the interior clubhouse and the exterior clubhouse feel like a very robust living experience. You know, not only to get people to lease and want to live here, but also to help with the day-to-day living experience. As you know, as they've got their limited apartment, you know, having access to these amenities, we think that is great. Outside of that Four Seasons area, so the area that's sort of the 2/3 to the left, you know, we integrate the pool using more of a softer shape to resolve a lot of the geometries, creating a little social seating zone within the pool that we think could be fun, and locating the chase seating in a shade structure sort of on the north and the west side of the pool, and then integrating stormwater management to the extent that we can to not only serve as a buffer to the units from the pool, but also to create softness within the courtyard. And everything here within the courtyard starts to take on a more organic, sort of naturalistic feel, compared to a lot of projects where just the tight space just kind of calls for something cleaner and simpler. You can see we didn't talk much about this, but there are 2 service points for trash for the building, one on the right-hand side that also accommodates the move in, move out, which is another advantage of that lower first location, being able to allow move in, move out to happen in that one zone. But from a trash standpoint, we have 2 locations at the ends of the building. So you can see that there's access to service here on the left. Can we go to the next slide? Just sort of a simple diagram to talk a little bit about how we tend to secure the site. Obviously, the building provides protection from highway, I think that's Highway 100 there, from the adjacent highway. Within the pool, within the courtyard, obviously we'll need to enclose that. So we have a 6-foot height fence that will need to separate the Four Seasons area from the pool. You can see that in the blue lines. And then because, and Jeff made this point earlier, because we're trying to set this up on the plateau, the existing topography, there's very limited intervention to the adjacent grading. So you can see a sort of a CMU block retaining wall that we'll need along the fire access lane to the northwest, as well as a small retaining wall in between the 2 parcels that will help address that service access that we need there. Next slide. Just from the standpoint of, you know, a few precedent to hit it where we're sort of going at, we want it to be refined, but we want it to be organic at the same time. You know, that pool's a little bit more organic than I've drawn, but the idea is to have, you know, multiple areas for it to be softer, lights through the area. I think the bottom right image is a great one, just this more organic bluestone and the materiality feeling more organic, but having a richness and a higher end quality to it. Outdoor kitchens and interesting lighting would all be integrated into those areas. Next slide. Just in regards to the fire access, being able to have that, playing with the sidewalk to try to create something out of a zone that is really refined and difficult to use. We've done that with the grass paved system where, the compacted subgrade, the sand infill, and then, irrigate it to make sure that it lives and looks good. Next slide. And this is the last slide, and then I can turn it over to questions, but this one is for Larry, because I know the last 2 times that I've presented to you, you've made the point that, pollinators and diverse plant palettes are critical to, what we need. And we want to do that, and we think this is a good project to do it. Just the organic nature of what we're trying to achieve in the courtyards also plays into this idea. So just wanted to make sure that I've heard you the last 2 times.
Thanks, Brian.
And with that,
I repeat myself so much on that topic that I guess it's starting to sink in.
Starting to sink in. That's right. You're making your impact. With that, we can go back to maybe an overall slide, Justin, and I can turn it over for questions.
So Nick, you want to give a staff report?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is Nicholas Haynes, everyone. I work for the Department of Planning and Zoning, Planner 1. The design team did a very thorough job, I think, presenting, the product that they're proposing, along Deer Path Road. As Mr. Ogle mentioned, this property is zoned TOD, roughly almost 4.5, it's 4.31 acres, parcel of 634. Which has, real close, frontage along Route 100. And I'm sure you guys are all very familiar with the site. It's right down the street from the Dorsey Mark Station, which is right at the other end of Deer Path Road. Department of Planning and Zoning, we're hoping the panel can provide some, comments or, on, the arrangement and layout of, this proposed development. We know the Dorsey apartments, are coming, across the street. So, the idea I think would be that this project works somewhat in tandem with the adjacent project, that's forthcoming. And while we haven't seen these designs, in real depth yet, but we know it's coming. So, if the panel could make recommendations and, evaluate the layout, frontage design. How does this project, meet, the intent of the TOD, the TOD zone requirements that are established in the Route 1 guidelines, creating that, pedestrian interest and, that connection to the station, which is down the street. So any recommendations, condition, you guys could, discuss, on how to maybe, enhance that connection, or maybe, change something, or, improve, the design, that's put forth. Any comments or recommendations on, is the arrangement and landscaping, does it support this overall layout and design? This is, there is office building, next door, in nearby. So it does this, help screen, provide, really friendly atmosphere for, the proposed product. And then any recommendations you guys could make on the open and amenity spaces. Does the courtyard loop trail function work, well in its, current configuration, and how the site is arranged? Is there maybe something that they could do different that might, help, accentuate those proposed uses? And if the panel could, provide any comments, recommendations, we'd be greatly appreciative.
Okay, let me just start off with a general comment in that it's a very nice looking project. I think the architecture, I'll defer to my colleagues on that, but I find it appropriate for what you're trying to do. And
Hey, Bob, we never introduced ourselves or anything, so I don't know if we need to do that or.
Oh.
Yeah. I mean, that's usually a formality we do. I just didn't know whether we were going to do that.
My first time being chairman, I slipped up. I'm Bob Gorman. I'm chairman. I think I'm chairman, right, Anthony? So,
That's correct.
I'm chairman of the DAP. Larry,
Yeah, I'm Larry Quarrick, and I'm a landscape architect.
Fred,
Fred Marino, I'm an architect.
Vivian,
Vivian Stone, architect.
do we have anyone else?
Dan's on the
Okay.
phone. Dan is here on the phone, I think.
Who is Dan?
Dan joined us by phone.
You there,
There?
Dan?
Oh, maybe we
Okay,
lost him.
well, going forward, I think in general, it's the site work is very nice. The building, you know, it fits in with what you're trying to do in this area. I have two questions. One is, and I'm not sure how you solve this, but if I live in the westernmost apartment at the end of the panhandle, how far away am I from the nearest elevator in the garage? It looks like a long way.
Well, the nearest elevator will be right outside of that end of that wing. To answer that question, right where that where every time we show a service area, there will be an elevator.
No, but if I'm parking my car, those don't help me.
Right. And the distance to the garage, I haven't calculated, but I probably can real quick.
I mean, I don't know how you solve it. It just looks like it's a really, really long way. And I'm wondering if you could move one of those elevators up to the intersect of the panhandle and the garage. At least that would take that long run on the west side of the garage out of the mix for those folks.
Yeah, that certainly could be done. Yes.
And then my second question is, if you have guests coming here, it looks like you have maybe 9 spots on the street. Are there any guest spots inside the garage?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, there are.
You got 250 units. People are going to have people visit.
Right.
And
Yeah, we use a ratio, and we've been using this on all of our projects, and it came from the traffic engineer. We usually had to apply for a waiver of some kind, I'm not sure, but ever since we've started doing these long route one, the ratio is generally 1.8 spaces per unit. We find that that provides adequate parking for the residents and the guests, and we've pretty much adhered to that for the for all of these projects, as far as I know.
there's my only,
Typically, I'm sorry.
those are my only 2 questions. I just I
Okay.
always worry about you know, these people do have people come and visit them, and
Right.
it's something
Right.
you need to think about. And I
Yeah.
guess you
Your concern about the long hallways, I share with you, and you know, this building type is really becoming the face of multifamily housing, and it's a fascinating building type, but it's also a building type that's just ripe for innovation, where there are a lot of other multifamily building types that have pretty much, they've done everything you can do with them. And I think I promote this all the time, one of the things that I think it really has to be thought through when you do these buildings with these long corridors are points of orientation. And you can't quite see it, but up to the left of the pool, there's an opening there, and that's meant to be one of those points of orientation where as you're walking down that corridor, it's like an ingle nook or a little sitting area. And in an ideal world, it would also have an outdoor sitting area. And it's just to give the residents the opportunity to see outside. I mean, I walk through these buildings that I design and I get lost, you know, I get disoriented.
Well, I guess what I'm thinking of is the elderly person who's schlepping a couple of bags of groceries a quarter of a mile from their car to their unit. And I guess they just have to be more careful where they pick their unit.
Oh, yeah. To some degree, yeah, you're right. But it's the the length of this corridor is not beyond the length of many that we've done, and that's not to say that there aren't problems associated with it, but it seems like the appeal of the building, the buildings are magical. I mean, I've designed thousands of units, and there's something about combining the amenity area into a building where you also live, as opposed to a freestanding clubhouse that just has exponentially more activity, people using it much more because it's so accessible by the people living there. And I think that's one of the biggest, I think that's one of the strongest attributes of this building type. And Brian did an excellent job of explaining how it also ties in the indoor space to the outdoor space. They almost become inseparable. So they don't become token fitness centers and theater rooms. They become areas that are really actively used, and people really interact. Now, they may be sitting there, the socially challenged may be off in a corner somewhere, but they do show up in these amenity areas. And I think that's one of the most exciting attributes of this building type. The other devices that very briefly, other devices that we try to introduce are at the end of long court. We have these kind of visual speed bumps, and I don't know if we've shown any here, but we put bay windows. So as you're walking down the corridor, you're directed around. It angles off, so it's not a continuous sight line all the way down the corridor. And when we have the ability, we try to also put glass at the end of the corridors. I think the very top stairwell there, I think, demonstrates that, where, I have my famous saying, people are like bugs that are attracted to light. So if you're walking towards light, I think it helps also with the people's comfort level and security and a lot of different issues. But it also gives you the opportunity to, again, have that point of orientation. And the other thing I wanted to mention briefly is relative to the Route 100 manual, the frontage, Dorsey Deer Path is about 400 lineal feet of frontage, and we have 300 feet of building frontage. Now, we don't have commercial on the lower level, sadly, but we just can't seem to attract that business type. But the building is very purposely pushed up to the right of way, and the car is nothing takes care of automobiles more than these precast garages that you wrap with apartment units. I mean, it becomes almost a non-issue visually, and certainly helps with the garage decreases your impervious area by a factor of 5 or what, 80% to you would need 5 times that much land area if it was all surface park. So that's a real benefit of the parking garage.
Larry?
Yeah, so I had a few comments. One, I just wanted to start, I drove by there this afternoon and I was confused as to where the site was, because first of all, I didn't see the typical DAP, advisory county sign, but I see now that it is an existing building. Is there any effort to go for any type of LEED certification on this building?
Yes, all of our buildings are LEED certified, and we use the NGBS grading system as the standard. And I can't tell you the level yet, but they all, this building will be green certified.
Okay. And I'm hoping that's going to include, it's not really something that's about the new building, but I don't know how old that building is, but I'm thinking it's less than 20 years old. So it's always kind of upsetting to me that we build for such a short period of time in this country. So are the materials in terms of, LEED certification or, the certification you talked about? I know there's credits for disposal of building materials, hopefully recycling what can be recycled rather than all the asphalt from the parking lot and all the brick and everything just going into a landfill. I'm just curious about that in terms of, the credits that you are going after.
Well, I think I'm safe in saying that, yeah, the materials are recycled. I know the asphalt for sure is recycled.
Okay.
We haven't had the opportunity where there was an existing building like this. It's an interesting idea to try to recycle some of the masonry, and with costs being what they are, which is just completely out of control, it may
Right.
make a whole lot more sense. The other thing I didn't mention is that solar panels, we've done similar to Verde. We're now entertaining solar arrays on top of it's become a business of its own, and
Okay.
we haven't made any definitive decisions yet, but I know that the whole team is open to the idea of exploring that, where it's becoming, with each passing year, it's becoming more and more viable to include some type of solar panels.
Right. Well, that was my next question, so I'm glad you're considering that, especially when you have all these flat roof surfaces above the parking garage and all that. It just seems like it's something that should be explored and could actually be, beneficial to, the energy, reducing the carbon footprint.
Yeah.
Actually, I'm going to let Vivian, speak to that, but I like the front facade, the fact that the short end of the building is really facing Deer Path, and then you have this nice sort of open area that receives, it terminates your view into the courtyard area. So I generally like it. I do agree that by just putting simple things like the window paint, the decorative frames on the windows, and that you do get that residential feel and a more homey look. And I do see the similarities to the refinery, as well as several other buildings that have been developing along the Route 1 corridor, especially down in the Blue Stream area. So it seems to be fitting generally the architecture of the area. But again, I'll defer to Vivian. But regarding the courtyard, I think the amenities are great. It seems like it would be kind of a four-season use there. I'm assuming the pool is just like 3 months out of the year. Is that correct? It's not covered or doesn't have any type of heating within the pool?
Yeah, I mean, usually what we'll do, we keep the water in it and we, heat it to a level so that it's still part of the leasing tour and you see the water, but it's not heated like you'd want to swim in it.
Right.
But
And
we don't run a cover. With this group, we haven't run a cover over them.
okay. And so generally the stormwater you're doing within the courtyard and the images that you've shown are definitely going to be beautiful, and I think that'll be a great courtyard. I did have one question, and you all probably can answer better than me because you know what the tenant makeup is, but it seems to me with 250 units here, and then I don't know how many are across the street, there's really nothing for kids to do. I mean, I don't know, maybe the makeup is more single people or young couples that don't have children yet, but I would imagine that there would be a certain number of children within these buildings, and I don't see anything like a play area. And I was looking over in the dog park area, wondering whether some sort of play structure, at least for younger children, could be incorporated into this plan. It seems to be very adult oriented. So yeah, just have that, wanted you to consider that as you, go forward with the amenities.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
we certainly can, and that's always an item for consideration. You often have a small percentage of families or
Especially
with
since
young kids.
I think it's the range is 1 to 3 bedrooms, so I would think that a 3-bedroom. I know people often have larger apartments and they use the bedrooms for other things, but I would guess that there would be a certain number of children within the building, as well as the one across the street.
Yeah.
I do like the fact that the fire lane is really green, and it's going to be permeable pavement. And then the trail, as it kind of sort of sways back and forth, is a nice feature. And you've already mentioned your dedication to native plant materials, but I think there is an opportunity to kind of take those woods in the forest, behind it between your property and Route 100, and take the varieties of the trees and kind of bring them out into your site, whether it's sycamore, red maple, willow oak, whatever, as well as maybe enhancing it with, serviceberry and redbud, things that are, would be growing in those woods if they had been undisturbed, and then just sort of bring them out into your site. I think it'd be a nice way to kind of soften it and have it relate more to nature than it would normally be. I did wanted to ask about seating areas along the pathway. You made no mention of that, but it is a loop. I don't know how long. It's a fairly long loop. And in fact, it's actually not a loop. I did want to ask about that. As it comes out to the service area there and then along the front, I'm hoping there's a walkway that would then, if somebody did want to just make the loop, would be able to feel safe on a walkway that went in front of the building and then hooked back up to the, I guess, east end of the loop there. Unless I'm just not seeing it on the plan. So I guess I see sort of 3/4 of a loop, but not the front portion of it.
It's there, Larry. The pathway goes all the way to Deer Park.
Okay, but does it go along Deer Park is what I'm asking.
There's a sidewalk along Deer Path. We're providing a sidewalk along that front of the building along Deer Path.
Okay, so that completes the loop.
Yes, yes.
All right. With regard to circulation, I see kind of like the pathway through the dog park that has like an arrow or something. Is the intent to make a connection to the hotel and the stained glass pub in that area, or is there no way of really doing that? It would be nice to have that connection, especially for these residents that may want to walk over to the restaurant or whatever.
Well, currently there's a sidewalk for the Dorsey Apartments that runs along that side of the Dorsey Apartments.
Oh, so you could cut through there and then get up onto the main road.
Yes, and we also put a connection. You can't see it at the lobby entrance. There's a sidewalk connection. We added right there. There's a tree in the way. You can't really see the sidewalk, but we're envisioning that there's a little bit of a crosswalk right there at that entrance. So you could go from the sidewalk on either side and then over to the sidewalk along the Dorsey Apartments.
Okay, and then I imagine, traffic's light at that point anyway, since it's the end of the street and basically it's ending into your vehicular court.
Right.
Let's see, there are a couple other things and then I'll shut up. You mentioned deliveries, and I'm starting to see, like, even on my own street, we have like 8 houses. There's constantly FedEx trucks and Amazon trucks, and so I'm wondering, with a complex like this with 250 units, how are you going to handle that? I mean, I would imagine there would be constant deliveries of that type of thing, and I don't even know in an apartment complex whether deliveries take place up to the unit itself, or is it to like a main drop-off desk in the main lobby. But in either case, I'm wondering along the street there whether there needs to be a designated drop-off or temporary parking zone, just because I don't know if you want all these delivery trucks going into the vehicular court, which I would imagine would be happening on a daily basis quite often.
Yeah, I can address that. So, just to the south of the entrance, we've considered marking a couple of those spaces for delivery trucks to pull over and enter the club there. As a general trend, projects like this have a mail room, and then as I've watched over the years, a package room that gets bigger and bigger from a programming standpoint. But there would be a package room within the clubhouse, and as that interior gets developed, we'd be able to determine if we can make a connection down on the sort of page south of the building in order to better connect. I think to your point, it would be nice if we could pull those trucks off to the side there, let them, unload before they sort of turn around in the vehicular court.
Yeah, I would agree. And the architect is listening too. And I guess that is something you need to consider in terms of how people are purchasing things. I mean, even groceries now are arriving, by, people are calling it in. So it's definitely something that needs to be considered with the service and the general vehicular circulation.
It's a point well taken. I went out to one of our projects to at dusk to take a couple pictures, and in the 10 minutes I was near the entry, there were 3 vehicles pulled up that were bringing, I guess, dinner to residents.
Yeah, I wasn't even thinking of that, but yeah, whether it's groceries or,
It,
drop off of dinners and then the other packages and stuff, it's just a constant stream of delivery vehicles.
it is pretty constant. And the other thing I wanted to mention is inside the building, what used to be the old package room when you go down and that person would go retrieve your box. They now have become very sophisticated locker storage with 24-hour access, so you don't need anybody to take you there. You just, with your fob or whatever, have access to go get your package 24 hours a day. I know that there's refrigerated package rooms available. I think this particular management group has avoided that. I think that there's some issues related to that and some liabilities related to that, but
Right.
the traffic is constantly coming and going. And the one that surprised me was the food delivery. It somewhat follows it seems to be somewhat of a generational thing. It seems like the younger the resident is, the more that they have the food delivered to them. It's just,
Right. Yeah, and then it's also a safety factor with some of the virus, the COVID and all that, or people not feeling
Yeah.
safe and going out, or they might be compromised or whatever.
Right.
The final comment I had is it's really kind of disappointing. It's really not for the developer, but we talk about complete streets in the county, and Deer Path is very wide, and there is no walkway from. I know you're putting it in front of your building, but if you develop along this in the future, I'm hoping that somehow a dedicated walkway. I mean, here we have the MARC train station, and then we have all these units. I would imagine there's going to be quite a few that would like to just walk to the MARC train station. Someone mentioned the bike lane. It is there. It's designated. It's striped, but it's parking. It's the whole line, all the way up Deer Path. Cars are parked on both sides within the bike lane. So the bike lane is useless. And even if they weren't parking there, I don't think you feel all that safe walking, in just a striped bike lane. So I just for the future, I hope that we can make streets like this, especially in the TDOZ zones, where you have transportation and you want these special areas for people to feel safe and to really enjoy walking to the transit station. So I just bring that up because I was kind of shocked today that first of all there was no sidewalk, and then I said, oh, but there's a bike lane, but literally the entire length of it, both sides, even though it's designated on both sides, is parked. So it's really street parking. And with that, I don't have any other comments. But
That's
I
really
think
a
good
county
job,
issue.
generally.
That's really a county issue, and I think planning and zoning ought to, do a memo to whoever's in charge of that, because we've brought that up before on Deer Path on other projects, and it's supposed to be transit related development. Well, you got to be able to get to the transit.
Exactly.
So
Right.
it's not this developer's problem because he's putting the sidewalks in.
Yeah,
Right. No,
I think,
and I compliment you for doing that.
yeah, I think that there's momentum growing. There has to be as these office building and these other sites are populated with residential buildings, and the demand is going to be there, and I think the people living there are going to make the demand that the sidewalks be put in. We, of course, just don't have the ability to tell other landowners what to do.
Right.
We're certainly supportive of it, but we have to get it has to be something really working hand in hand with the county to make happen, because I couldn't agree with you more that it's needed.
Well, thank you for putting it in front of along your frontage. So that's a start anyway.
Yeah.
All right. I don't have any other comments, Bob. I'll turn it over to Vivian or whomever.
Are you with us, Vivian?
Hi, yes, hi. How's everyone doing?
Good.
Beautiful presentation. I think it's going to be a really nice project. I really appreciate the attention to detail from the architecture to the amenity spaces, just the use of, innovative kind of the green emergency access pathway. I just had a couple of questions. So I guess this is for Jeff. The elevation facing Route 100, is that the brick facade, or is that going to be the siding?
That elevation will be primarily siding.
Okay. And is that going to be visible from Route 100?
I'm quite sure it would be. Maybe we can go back to the Justin, go back to the SketchUp. I mean, as you know, they're formidable buildings, and I have to believe that you will be able to see it.
So I'm wondering if, because just in comparison to the brick facades, to me, I think even the siding facades are attractive, but they look more like an interior courtyard type of facade rather than an exterior. And I'm wondering, I guess it looks to me like you took the stance of having the Deerfield elevation be the primary one and the highway kind of be the back of the building.
We kind of did. I mean, with only 25 to 30% budgets that were given, you know, with only being able to clad 25 to 30% with masonry, we have to be pretty judicious, right or wrong. We kind of put that in the more high visibility areas. And again, part of the problem with the siding elevation is the drawings are a little bleached out, but we get some pretty vivid colors, and the base of the entire building will be masonry, which is a nice unifying effort. So I don't know that the drawings delivered that as well as they could, but there is a distinction. Don't get me wrong. You are correct. There is more brick along Deer Path than there will be facing Route 100.
So is it, if we look at the rectangular portion that's wrapping the garage, is it brick on all three sides?
Well, there's brick. Well, let's go back. Can you go back to the?
Yep, Bob, I'm going back.
Yeah. The elevation facing the, go back, elevation facing the office building. Okay, there's the bottom drawing is the elevation facing Deer Path, where there's a lot of brick on that facade. And then the elevation above that is when you turn the corner, it's on the east side of the building. That's the elevation facing the office building.
I see, that's the long side.
Right.
I got
And that what looks like white on the bottom, that the base, that will all be masonry of some kind. And maybe we should have distinguished it more with a little deeper color, but
I can see it. It's got a different texture.
yeah.
Yeah.
But
And
then,
is
oh, I'm sorry. Go
the
ahead.
cream, so that cream in the middle, is that white brick or is that all siding?
The cream that in the middle is predominantly siding, and it's usually different tones of siding, like clay and wicker, and mostly earth tones, but it'll have more contrast than what we're showing there, and I apologize for not getting.
No, I think I'm just trying to, it's hard to do that in a rendering, but I think, I mean, overall, it's a very attractive elevation. Just the articulation and the detail is really nice.
Vivian, one thing I noticed when I was out there, that this does set below Route 100, and it's quite wooded. It's not a real wide stretch, but with it being 4 stories, I'm thinking that maybe it would just be like the top story, maybe part of the 3rd story that would be visible. The rest of it would be pretty much hidden by the wooded area, if that helps, and with your concern.
By any means. I was
Yeah,
just
and because the client is officed in the building that's there now, I remember driving there and parking on that on a space facing Route 100, and you can see Route 100, but it is somewhat screened at that level. So I'm guessing by the time you're on the 4th floor, it'd be pretty visible.
The other question or comment I had was on the main entrance. Can you go to the main entrance portion? Yeah, this one. So I think this is a beautiful elevation. But the only thing that I'm wondering if you had considered was those little awnings on the center portion where you have 4 individual awnings.
Uh,
Have you thought about or looked at having, maybe 2 of them combined or having a larger one? It just seems like with that being the central focus, by having 4 little ones, it's almost like they're diminutive compared to the adjacent awnings.
I'd have to agree with you, and having said that, I can assure you it will be changed. I mean, the
I think it's
canopy
not,
over the entry,
yeah.
I think accomplishes much more what, unifies that
Hmm.
glazed area better, but they do look a little trite.
Yeah,
And they're very expensive, by the way.
I bet.
It's actually a louvered solar trellis in effect. It looks like it's opaque, but it's actually very open. But it's to try to give some sun protection. But they're made by Mapes and people like that. They're quite expensive.
Hmm.
So we do want them to look good.
Yeah. But again, those are the only comments I had on the architecture. And then on the courtyard amenity space, um, I you don't have to go to it, but the only thing that I had on that was I like the idea of the 4 seasons, being able to use the courtyard in cold weather months. It seems a shame that we're taking so much of it for the pool. I'm wondering if there's any way to be able to utilize more of that pool deck area, um, round year round. Um, if you just look at the proportion of the pool to the fire pit and the barbecue areas, um, it's like 2/3. Um, but just a thought. Um, and then I had a question on the calculations. Jeff, when you had introduced the building, you said complying with the TOD requirements, we only built on 50% of the property. Is that correct? It looks like
Yeah.
the building is taking up like most of it. Are you
No,
not
Definition,
parking?
the definition for TOD is you can't do any more than 50% on the property for residential, but it it doesn't include that 50% doesn't include the parking garage.
Okay,
yeah,
that's what I was
And
wondering.
and the
that's
parking garage is not considered the building.
and I think
Uh,
that, and that's our saving grace, and I think that's based on, the alternative is that could all be surface parking. So that's why they don't penalize you for the parking garage being
I gotcha. Right,
considered.
because it's stacked. You got the stacked levels
Right,
instead of
right,
having one
correct.
gigantic parking lot. Okay.
Right.
All right. Thank you for that. Um, Other than that, those were all my comments.
Thank you.
Thank
Are you
you.
allowed to comment, Fred?
No, I'm actually recusing myself, so I'm just listening and giving us a quorum.
Okay. So, I think, are there any further comments? Any recommendations?
You asking for motions or?
Yes,
Okay.
motions.
Okay, well, I have a motion. The motion is that the applicant take a look at the recreational facilities and see if they can incorporate a children's play area and possibly some seating areas along the loop trail.
I'll second that. All in favor?
Aye.
Do we have everybody there?
Aye, yeah.
Okay, all, that's unanimous then. I'd like to make a recommendation that you consider relocating at least one of the elevators in the garage so it's more convenient to the furthest away apartments.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Plan, it almost looked like the kind of Inglenook area that you were describing, Jeff, would
Uh-huh.
be a logical location for an elevator lobby. But then
Okay.
it would be an elevator lobby and not an Inglenook, I guess.
Well,
But,
I think we could get both in there.
Yeah.
All
Well,
in favor? Aye, aye.
Aye.
Any other recommendation or motions?
Nothing from me.
Nothing from me.
Okay, I guess we're done. Thank you very much. Nice project and good luck.
well, thank you. As always, your comments are very helpful, and I will be sending out glamour shots of myself since you didn't get to see me tonight.
Don't forget.
I think I have everybody's address, so.
And Jeff, you said that the view of the apartment that is going to be built this summer, you can see that online somewhere, or I'm just curious as to what it looks like.
On Dorsey,
Yeah, the one that Jason across the street.
I think we may have it on our website. If we don't, first thing tomorrow, I will send you the image. Oh, okay, there we go.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so
There's
it's
the-
definitely in the same architectural theme.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the site looking off. Is it Dorsey Road?
Yeah, Dorsey is the one that intersects with Deer Path.
Okay, Dorsey, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that elevation is the elevation looking from Dorsey Road at the Dorsey apartment project.
Okay.
Yeah, I just grabbed the original DAP presentation, so I'm certain there are things that may have been tweaked, but just as a color image, I thought this was helpful.
That's 6 years old.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it takes a while from the DAP approval to get to the point where you're actually building.
Yeah.
All those motions, maybe.
I'm sure you're all experiencing it too as design professionals. The cost of materials are really putting a kink in some of the schedules of these projects.
Right, I would imagine.
They're completely out of control.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Do we have anything
right.
else on the agenda, Anthony?
We don't have any projects on the agenda. Nick, did we have any other business to go over?
Not this evening. But I can put on the panel's radar that we do have a project scheduled for February 9th. That information is going out tomorrow morning. For you guys, it's a big one. It's a project down in Columbia, the Lakefront North neighborhood. So that stuff's information's forthcoming.
Okay.
Yeah, and that one will be multiple. It's a lot to review, so that one project will take the entire evening.
Yeah, we had some question about that, and I threw it out to the panel, and we should get it over with in one meeting.
Yep. That's totally fine. I wanted to make sure that you guys were on board with that. And so that works for us. We'll have them work out the presentation piece to be segmented so that you could get a piece of the presentation, provide comments, and move to the next piece. So
And we'll give them extra time if they need it, so that's no problem.
Yep. Excellent.
Okay, thanks, everybody.
You gonna call to
everybody.
adjourn?
Good one.
Call to
Bye.
adjourn?
Motion that we adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
Bye.
Have a good
Thanks.
night.
Good night.
Good night.
Night.
Thanks, everybody.